If you set a New Year's resolution to write your book in 2024, I have an amazing offer for you. Page and Podium will be raising our prices by 20% starting April 1st, 2024. But in the meantime, every new client who signs their contract and pays their deposit will be grandfathered in at the 2023 rates. That is a 20% discount from our rates moving forward. You do not want to miss this. Head over to pageandpodium.com/contact to fill out your application now. I love a good ghost story. And yes, I am being punny here. I am talking today about ghostwriters. Now, I talk to a lot of aspiring first-time authors, and one thing that I find is that so many people could really boost their book if they worked with a ghostwriter, either in full or just for revisions or another part later in the process. But so many people are afraid of ghosts. So if you have a lot of questions, things like, is it cheating? Is it plagiarism? If I work with a ghostwriter, will they steal my ideas or will they take over my book? I am going to address all of those very common fears and more. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this one. So I find that this fear of ghosts is really similar to the fear that a lot of people have of delegating things that they really care about. Now, if you are a small business owner, if you are in any kind of a leadership position, or even if you just are somebody that manages your tasks around your house, you have probably experienced this fear of delegation, this feeling that nobody else can do this except for me. And if you felt that, I'm sure that you also know that those feelings are so much stronger the more you care about your project. So many of the people that I speak with they care so much about this book project. Sometimes actually not that uncommon, I talk to people who have been working on their book project for over a decade. Sometimes they have a manuscript that's either partially completed or it's just like a rough draft. Sometimes they have very little. And whatever the problem is, whether that's, they don't have enough time, they don't know where to start, they are not sure how to keep making progress consistently, they don't know how to make a plan, whatever the problem is, it almost always is something that could be helped with a ghostwriter, right? Ghostwriters can help you with the planning. In fact, most ghostwriters, particularly start to finish, they're just going to do the planning for you, right? Good ghostwriters, I should say, are very highly trained in what the industry is looking for. And that is almost always what readers are looking for too. So you are going to get that planning that helps you figure out not only how to finish the book, but make sure it's really, really good. You are going to just also be able to hand off so much of the part that's not as fun, right? The sitting with the computer and the typing. And really embrace then, in the time you free up, you're going to be able to embrace your ideas for the book, which is the fun part, right? So why do people hesitate then when there are so many amazing advantages? Well, I've got 5 reasons that I hear all the time. So I want to just run down these reasons. And you know what? If you still decide, in fact, if you decide at the end of this, actually, now that I've heard this, a ghostwriter is not for me, then you'll know that, right? But I do think that a lot of people really overlook this opportunity because of these fears. All right, so let's talk about our first fear first. And that is, I find that a lot of people are really concerned that if they work with a ghostwriter, they are effectively plagiarizing. Now, I get this. As you know, if you've been watching this video series or video channel for very long, you know that I spent a lot of years teaching in the college classroom. So we talked about plagiarism all the time. The very basic definition that I used to give when I taught was that plagiarism is taking someone else's ideas and saying that they are yours. Now, I understand why people think that working with a ghostwriter would fit that description, right? Because you're thinking, this is, the ghostwriter is really the one that's putting this stuff on the page. And so if we think of, what is on the page, if we think of that as the idea, then I would be having a ghostwriter write this bit, get those ideas on the page, and then I would say it's mine. Definitely plagiarism. Well, we're going to talk a little more about kind of idea versus writing, but rest assured, whenever you are working with a ghostwriter who is worth their salt, they are not going to be putting their own ideas onto the page. In fact, and I'm a certified ghostwriter, a lot of ghostwriters are certified. That's a good question to ask when you're interviewing. But I will tell you that a huge part of the certified ghostwriter training, huge part of that program is testing ghostwriters to make sure that we are able to leave our stuff off the page. So that is not to say, that your ghostwriter won't help you with the idea. We're going to kind of get to that later. But rest assured, by the definition of plagiarism, the idea is yours. So is the ghostwriter helping you get the idea onto the page? Yes, that is our job. But when we are thinking specifically from the point of taking an idea that is not yours and putting your name on it, that is not at all what's happening with a ghostwriter. The idea was yours to begin with. You're going to put your name on it, of course. It was your idea, right? But when we're speaking on the very strict sense of plagiarism is taking someone else's idea and putting your name on it, that is not what ghostwriting is, right? When you hire a ghostwriter, you give them the idea. So they are processing it into words on the page, but you are putting your name on your idea. It was always your idea. Okay, but I would say really when I hear this concern about plagiarism, a lot of times there is more to it than kind of the ethical piece. A lot of times people are really worried they're going to get in trouble. So I want to talk a second piece of this plagiarism puzzle, and that is, what do you do when you work with a ghostwriter, you get your agent, you sign your book contract? Are you going to be in trouble at some point as your agent or your publisher finds out? That's how it's always worded. What if they find out that I used a ghostwriter? Well, here is the best news of all. I have never heard of an agent or a publisher being upset that an author hired a ghostwriter. Never. And here is why. When an agent or a publisher takes you on, they're taking a couple of pretty big risks. So the first risk, this is what everybody knows already. The first risk is going to be they are nervous that the product isn't going to be very good, right? Now, when you submit your proposal, which your agent and your publisher will both see, put sample content in there so that they are going to be able to check and make sure that you know what you're doing, that the proposal is good, the book is going to be good. But of course, people do hire ghostwriters for proposals and then not hire a ghostwriter and try to do the regular work themselves. That happens, right? If you are working with a ghostwriter throughout, your agent and your publisher knows exactly the quality that they are going to get from you. Great. They don't want to gamble. They want to really limit the amount of risk that they're taking on. So if you're working with a ghostwriter, you've got that one in the bag. The second thing that they are looking to minimize their risk on, and this one I find actually is much, much more common, is they don't want to sign somebody on who then is going to take an extension and another extension and another extension. And is the book going to get done? Let alone, is it going to get done on time? A lot of times people will take contracts and then just not even finish the book. So when you're working with a ghostwriter, that one is also taken care of, right? Some ghostwriters, I'm sure that some ghostwriters do not deliver on time. Most of us are going to have a very clear schedule for you. It is going to build in things that might go wrong, things that often do go wrong, extra weeks. We always build in, any pre-planned vacation weeks that we have, so that when you go to your agent and publisher, when you're having those initial conversations, you do have to give them a date when you're going to be finished, and you will actually know what that date is. Most authors, if you're writing it yourself, it's kind of your best guess. If you are working with a ghostwriter, contractually, you know what that delivery date is going to be. So this idea that agents and publishers would be, put off or they wouldn't want to work with you, I have never seen that. What I have seen is that either authors just really don't want to share it, so they don't tell their agent and publisher. That's usually fine. Or they do share it with their agent or their publisher or both, and there's a lot of encouragement, there's a lot of excitement around that. So there is really no risk that, a book contract or an agent contract is going to fall through if they find out. I promise you, 9 times out of 10, they are going to be delighted. Probably the other one, they just don't care. Okay, so related to plagiarism, our second fear that I hear the most is that people are worried that they are cheating. Now, we're drawing a kind of fine line here, right? Because usually when people talk to me about like, oh, is it cheating? They're not talking about kind of legal or even really ethical. What they're talking about is, of course, when we write our books, we want to go to our community and we want to share this book, right? We want to celebrate ourselves. We want our friends and our family to be able to celebrate that book. You want to do your signings. I get it. And I think what people are worried about is if I hire a ghostwriter, then is that celebration of fraud? Have I really even done anything other than hire somebody? And I want to really lay this fear to rest, not only because it's kind of misguided, but also because if you come into your relationship with a ghostwriter thinking that they are doing all of the work and you don't do any input, that is not going to be a very successful relationship. So let's talk about kind of what would this mean if you were cheating. And the main thing I will say is that you will have to ask yourself, when you celebrate this book, are you celebrating that your story is out there, that you're helping people, that you're getting this message out that usually people have kind of been trying to get out in different ways already? Or are you celebrating the accomplishment of actually typing the words onto the page? And I don't mean that facetiously. That is a real thing that I want you to think about. What are you celebrating? Because if it is that you want to celebrate, I wrote out 60,000 words, revised, edited, I did the actual literary piece of this, you probably shouldn't work with a ghostwriter. I see this will happen sometimes where people get really kind of in their head about like, oh, should I say I wrote it? Should I not say I wrote it? And I will tell you, I heard from another ghostwriter at one point. They had ghostwritten several books for kind of a celebrity influencer type person. And then that influencer started offering writing courses. That's probably not great because you didn't really write it, right? You don't necessarily have the experience or the accomplishment of like typing that last word on the last page and calling it good. But really what I find is that the harder piece, the braver piece, the more intellectual piece is not the actual writing. The braver, more intellectual, harder piece is actually putting those ideas together, and you're doing that. Ghostwriters will help you kind of organize and sort and figure out the storyline, the narrative, make it engaging, yes. But you are the one who has to come up with the idea. You are the one that is developing these thoughts. You are the one that's bringing the stories to the table. So think about, which is it that I want to celebrate? Because if you want to celebrate the story and the idea and getting this message out, you can and should celebrate that, even if you worked with a ghostwriter. If, on the other hand, you're really wanting to celebrate your literary prowess and this literary accomplishment, that is probably not a ghostwriter situation. And often my suggestion really would be to see if you can take some college courses. There is really a lot that goes into learning to write before you even really get to starting a book project. So if you're trying to kind of jump ahead of that, that can be a reason that your project will get stalled. That isn't necessarily something that a ghostwriter is going to be really useful to help with. So to lay this to rest, is hiring a ghostwriter cheating? Yes and no. It is only cheating if the real accomplishment you want to take away is that actual literary, the actual writing part. Then you'll have to kind of decide for yourself. But if it's the publishing, the getting the story out, circulating your message, I think you should still brag to the heavens about that accomplishment, even if somebody else did the physical typing for you. Okay, and so for a lot of people, I also find that then when they start thinking about the idea versus the words, that then they get nervous in a whole different way, because it is really vulnerable to share your ideas and your messages and your stories with someone who really often at the beginning of the process, you don't know them that well, right? And what people are concerned about is, I'm going to share all my ideas and the ghostwriter is going to steal them. Now, here I want to be really, really clear. I am not giving you any kind of legal advice. And I can really only speak for myself and the ghostwriters that are part of Page and Podium Press. But I can tell you, we would never do that. And if, of course you would say that you're a ghostwriter, right? Let me tell you for certain why I would never steal anybody's ideas, because that would be a really quick way to put myself out of business, right? If I started publishing, and I hear that this happens sometimes, I don't think it's ghostwriters that do it, I think it's scammers, but I have heard of people who, they wrote their manuscript, they put it up, sometimes they'll put it on kind of a free book sharing site, or they'll send it to beta readers. Next thing they know, it's up on Amazon. That is not a ghostwriter doing that, because if I put that up on Amazon with my name, all you have to do is file you could literally ruin my whole career if I did that, right? And you would be right to do so, to be super, super clear. But there is really no benefit for ghostwriters of having somebody else's idea and passing it off as their own. We really only benefit when we successfully ghostwrite someone's book. And this is why, frankly, I tend to encourage authors to work with me outside of an NDA situation, a non-disclosure, because then I can talk you up, I can brag on your book, I can share your social stuff when it's published. That is really a mutually beneficial relationship. And most ghostwriters I know, that is what they're trying to do. They want long careers, they love working with authors, they really love the writing part. So having someone else bring ideas to them, to us, is actually really, really, that's what they want, right? We are not necessarily going for, all of the credit and all of the excitement of authoring a book. And when we are, we usually just author our own books. That's something that I do. I know a lot of ghostwriters do that too. So are you going to have somebody steal your book? Probably not. And if you do, it's probably not a ghostwriter. But I want to talk about a second kind of level under this fear of somebody stealing your idea, because I do see this sometimes when, kind of out in the online sphere. But when I hear about this, it is most often someone who is applying for a consult. They want to get on a call with me. And so we have an application form that we ask people to fill out. It's on our website under the contact form. Click apply when you go to pageandpodium.com. And they will fill the application out, but they will say, I really do not want to share any details here. So we can get on a call, but I don't, until I talk to you, I don't want to tell you what my book is about. I don't want to tell you any details. I get that. People are really concerned a lot of times that if they put their manuscript or even a part of their manuscript, that company is going to download it, publish it, you'll never see it again. I think some of this really carries over from what I was talking about earlier. It's really not in our best interest to do that. But the other thing I want to say, at least for Page and Podium, anytime somebody comes on a consult, that is already protected. It is already confidential. I am never, ever, ever going to have a consult with somebody and then, go put on social media, listen to this great book idea. I am never going to take somebody's title and, use it on my own work or give it to another client. I would never do that. And the way you're going to know that I would never do that is I would not be in business very long if I did. So there is a solution here though, and we do this all the time when people feel kind of just shaky. You can get a temporary NDA with a non-disclosure agreement, and you can ask for that. We send that to people all the time. So if you're coming on a consult and you're like, I know that I need to share with you, but I'm really nervous about it, you can always just reach out, email us at books@pageandpodium.com, and we will be more than happy to send you an NDA to cover that opening part of our relationship when we're doing the consult, looking over your work. We also do, and I don't know any ghostwriters that don't offer just whole project non-disclosure agreements. So again, if you're really nervous about it, if you want to make sure you've really got all your legal ducks in a row, that is another thing that you can ask for. Some ghostwriters only work under non-disclosure agreements. I was like that for a really long time. Others you may need to either request and or pay a little bit more, but that can be, really reassuring, really help you feel comfortable with the process, which is super important. Okay, number 4 in our list of things that authors tend to be afraid of in terms of ghosts. People are so nervous that the book is going to come out and it won't sound at all like them. Now, I get this, and I think that this comes from authors who have hired ghostwriters who were not really ghostwriters, but rather writers. So I hear this all the time that people will be like, oh, I want to hire a journalist. Well, I will tell you this, a journalist or, just a typical writer, they probably will write your book in their voice because they are not ghostwriters, they are writers. But I want to pull back to, again, if you are working with someone who is a certified ghostwriter, this is probably the second most rigorous aspect of ghostwriter training behind what I mentioned earlier, which is keeping yourself out of the ideas. Ghostwriters are trained to look for what we call tells. And the tells are the particular aspects of your speech or your writing that can help a reader or a listener associate those words with you. So this could be, to give a kind of non-nuanced example, right? I am from the Midwest. I am from Kansas. So I have always said I'm going to have a pop, right? Whether it's a Coke or a Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, or whatever it is, I'm going to have a pop. Now, when I moved down to Memphis in Tennessee, of course, I heard people say soda, I heard people say Coke and mean all the different varieties. I really actually stopped saying the word pop when I lived down there because people didn't know what I meant. So let's say that you're a Kansas person just like me, you hire a ghostwriter in the South. If you are doing any writing about Coke, cola, whatever you want to call it, I would expect any good ghostwriter to automatically correct and use the terminology that you use. Now, that is a non-nuanced example. That's a very, very specific reference. But this happens with all types of things in our speech and in our writing. Do you like long sentences or do you like your sentences to be very short? Do you like kind of flowery, interesting language? Do you want your writing to be very, very clear and to the point? There's all kinds of things like this that we do as speakers and as writers subconsciously. We would call that our voice, right? And while we don't think about those as writers and speakers, ghostwriters are trained to do this, truly. So part of the certification process is writing many, many ghostwritten things and copying the author's voice over. So if you are working with a certified ghostwriter, and this particularly is something that we at Page and Podium really pride ourselves on, this idea of, will it be in my voice really should not be a big concern for you. Again, I can't speak for everybody. I'm sure there are some ghostwriters that are not great at this, but we even have a whole block of testimonials on our website that are just specifically about people who were so impressed that we got their voice right. So, not something to worry about. It is something that you can ask your ghostwriter about. Again, ask them if they're certified, ask them if they write in your voice or theirs. But typically, if you are working with a ghostwriter, an experienced ghostwriter, that will be assumed that they're going to write it in your voice. If you are working with a writer, a journalist, maybe not, right? Probably they're going to write in their own voice. Okay, we have one more fear, and this one is, as all of them, this is a legitimate fear and something that really is worth thinking on before you start working with a ghostwriter, and that is budget. So I hear sometimes, oh my gosh, publishing a book is so expensive. It can be. That is certainly one way to look at it. One thing we really try to help people think about is how can you, from the very beginning of your book writing process, how can you really increase your odds of making that money back, of getting a return on investment or an ROI? So that is something you can kind of think about in terms of an investment as opposed to an expense. But one thing that you do need to think about is how much are you willing to spend on a ghostwriter? Now, at Page and Podium, we have a couple of different offers. So we have what we would call our full offer. From now until the end of March 2024, we are offering that at our 2023 rates, which is $37,950. That is the whole shebang. That's going to take you all 10 months of the process, from the idea generation all the way through that you have a publishable book. That's our big package. It's very hands-on. You can read more about that if you're interested on our website. We also have a smaller package, and I know a lot of ghostwriters will do this as well, kind of scale based on how much support you need. So our smaller package is $13,500. That is a little bit shorter book, so it's really ideal for your first book when you're kind of testing out publishing. You really want to make sure you get your ROI. Almost everybody does with this package. And it also is going to give you a little more hands-on work. So a lot of times people like this if they are bloggers or if they, do videos and podcasts, so they are really used to putting words together. Gives you a little bit more hands-on control. And that package also comes with your cover design and your layout and metadata, all the stuff you need to do the self-publishing route. Some ghostwriters are going to charge you kind of a specific project rate depending on your book. That's just a preference. And a lot of times ghostwriters will not share the prices up front. But you really should be prepared to spend at least 40, 50 cents a word up to $1 a word or more, depending on who you're working with. So if we're thinking about, a 45,000 word business book, a 60,000 word memoir, you can do that math. But I will say this, the budget can be prohibitive. So sometimes people will do things like crowdsource. Sometimes people will do things like, sign on at the end of the year so that you can get the deduction on your next year's taxes. Sometimes people will do things like even take a loan or get an investor who is willing to split that cost with them. There's all kinds of ways that you can get the money together if this is something that you want to do. But there really is no reason to be afraid of budget, right? Either the investment makes sense, we know we can earn it back, and we have a plan for doing that. Again, we help you with that when we work with you. Or you don't think you can earn it back, and you decide that you would rather either just go forward on your own, maybe work with a book coach, which can be a little bit more affordable, or maybe you decide, I don't know, it seems really expensive. I think maybe a book's not for me. Any of those are valid, understandable, totally reasonable choices to make. But again, there's no reason to be afraid of the budget. All you have to do, dive in, make a plan for how you are going to recoup that investment, and you can go forward without any more fears. All right, so I hope that at this point, if you're afraid of ghosts, it is only the spooky kind that walk around, in haunted castles in the middle of the night. No reason to be afraid of ghostwriters. We love working with clients. We love meeting new people, hearing about their stories, and that goes especially for us at Page and Podium. We would love to chat with you, make sure that we are the perfect choice for your book coaching, ghostwriting, or publishing needs. So stay tuned. We're going to give you a little bit more information on our promo, which is that 2023 pricing lasting into the first quarter of 2024. Stay tuned. Thanks so much.